Hello everyone! Dear students, today we will continue reading Chapter 6, Expert Detectives, written by Sharada Dwivedi. The chapter is an extract from the story called The Broken Flute, and the chapter is divided in two parts. Last time we read the first part and today we will read the second part. Before we start, let's see what do we remember. The two main characters are Nishad and Maya. Nishad and Maya are siblings. Nishad is 7 years old and Maya is 10 years old. They are inquiring and investigating about their neighbor, Mr. Nat. One day, while they were playing marbles, one marble rose into Mr. Nat's room, and they have a chance to see him. Nishad gets a chance to see him. His sister doesn't get a chance to see him clearly. Now they are wondering, is he a criminal on the run? They are also wondering, why is his face so badly scarred? And why has he no friends? Nishad and Maya are both speculating. They are trying to find out something more about Mr. Nat. Maya is convinced that Mr. Nat is a criminal, a crook on the run. Nishad is not very convinced. So as they were walking back towards the clinic, 7, we know that 7 is Nishad. He told his sister that Mr. Nat, he refers to Mr. Nat. He told his sister that Mr. Nat doesn't look so bad. He doesn't look anything like a monster. He says maybe he is very poor and he can't afford to eat. Nishad is very concerned. He is convinced that Mr. Nat is starving. However, Maya, his sister who is narrating the story, he is convinced that he is a crook on the run. So she finds many explanations, many reasons why he could be a crook on the run. Maya thinks that he probably has millions of rupees, a lot of money, hidden away somewhere in his room. Nishad is doubtful. But Maya is very convinced that he is a criminal. Maya says he certainly isn't starving. One Mr. Mehta told them that someone called Ramesh brings him meals from the restaurant downstairs. So that is why Maya thinks he certainly isn't starving, because someone brings him food. And they both keep discussing the reasons why Mr. Nat could be a criminal. Maya is very convinced that he is a criminal, and Nishad has a different opinion. He says that same Mr. Mehta told him he doesn't work anywhere. So Nishad wonders, how can he have money to pay for this? So the moment he is a bit suspicious, Maya agrees with him, and she says that he must have lots of money hidden somewhere. Probably silver and gold and jewels. And now Nishad is not agreeing. Maya is insisting. She mentions his scars. However, Nishad remembers that their mother, who is a doctor, told them that these are burn scars. Mr. Nut was a patient. Maya and Nishad have a mother who is a doctor, and Mr. Nut was her patient. So Nishad is remembering how their mother told them that these were burn scars. Maya is not convinced. She thinks that maybe the police had to set his house on fire to force him out, to make him go out of the house. Once, on Monday, after their mother's birthday, VII went with his mother to the clinic. His sister Maya didn't go, and she was not happy because she also wanted to be there. VII came, and he was quite upset about Mr. Nut's skinny appearance, gaunt appearance. He was looking very skinny, and he was sure that he was starving. So Nishad knocked on his door and gave him a chocolate. He thought he might be starving. However, Nishad said that Mr. Nut didn't even ask him in. He didn't invite him inside. But then he continued, smiling and saying that he had found out something. He went down to the restaurant where Ramesh works and he spoke to Ramesh. Him refers to Ramesh. So Ramesh told him a few things about Mr. Nut. Ramesh told him that he takes 2 meals for Mr. Nut, morning and evening, and 2 cups of tea, 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. Ramesh also said that Mr. Nut is not very particular, not very choosy about what he eats. It's always the same food, some chapatis, dal and the vegetables. He pays cash and tips well. He is very generous with tips. Nishad also found out that Mr. Nut has a visitor every Sunday, or almost every Sunday. Ramesh says that this visitor talks a lot. He is tall, fair, stout, and wears spectacles. Mr. Nut is quiet. He hardly speaks. After hearing this, Maya tells her brother that now they have made some progress. So they will have to sort out all the facts. They will have to sort out all the facts that they discovered about Mr. Nut, and after that they will be able to trap them, to trap him, to catch him. Nishad is not so convinced. He says, how can you possibly imagine he's a crook? He looks so ordinary. And Maya convinces him that criminals can look quite ordinary. She saw a picture in the newspaper, and there was a picture of housebreaker, someone who broke inside the house, and this person also looked very ordinary. Nishad was still doubtful. Nishad doesn't believe that Mr. Nut could be a crook. After monsoons came, followed by downpour with heavy rain, the streets were flooded, and Nishad and Maya had an unexpected holiday. Their school was closed, so Maya said she sat down and decided to do something useful. She sat in her bedroom with a sheet of paper to write something. Today we are continuing with part 2. So this is what Maya started writing. She says, I wrote in large block letters. These are block letters. Catching a crook. Expert detectives, Nishad and Maya Pandit, by appointment to the whole world. This is the title. Maya decides to write a story about herself and her brother catching Mr. Nut. By appointment to the whole world means officially chosen by someone important or having previously made an arrangement to do something. By appointment to the whole world. This is a phrase of appointment. By appointment to. It means they are officially chosen. They are expert detectives, Maya and Nishad Pandit. Maya continues saying, Then I began writing. About half an hour later, I turned towards VII, who was lying on his tummy, chin cupped in his palm, reading comics. Want to hear what I've written? I asked. So this is where Maya started writing. About half an hour later, she turned. She looked towards VII, who was lying on his tummy. Tummy means on the stomach. He was lying on his stomach, and his chin was cupped in his palms. Chin cupped in his palms means he was having hands holding his chin. To cup your hand is a phrase. It means to make your hand or hands into a curved shape, shaped like a cup. So Nishad had his chin cupped in his palms, reading comics. Comics means a periodical containing comic strips, usually intended for children, a comic book or a graphic novel. Maya asks him, Want to hear what I've written? Means, do you want to hear? Should I read it for you? He looked up questioningly. I've listed all the facts we know about Mr. Nut, which might help us to trap him, I said. Want to hear? And VII nodded. He means Nishad. He looked at his sister questioningly, means in a curious and questioning manner, in a quizzical manner. Maya continues. She says, I've listed all the facts we know about Mr. Nut. I have listed means I have noted down. I have written down. To list means to record, to write down or make a list of something. So Maya says that she had noted down, she had listed all the facts they know about Mr. Nut. Facts are some information. She had noted down everything they know about Mr. Nut, which might help them to trap him, to catch him. And she is asking Nishad, do you want to hear? So he nodded. To nod means to move your head up and down as if confirming. VII wanted to hear. Fact number 1. I read. His name is Mr. Nut. We must discover his first name. This is fact number 1. His name is Mr. Nut, and now they have to discover, they have to find out his first name. Mr. Nut is his last name. Do you think that's his real name, Maya? Nishad asked. Probably not, I said. Most crooks have an alias. Alias means an alternate name used to indicate that someone is known by some other name, maybe even more familiar. We could also say AKA, alias. It means an alternate name. So Maya is suggesting that he must be having a fake name. She says most crooks have an alias. I added a big question mark after Nat. After she wrote her fact, she made a big question mark, thinking that they should definitely find out his real name, if this one is the fake one, or at least his first name. Fact number 2. I read on. She continues reading. The tenants at Shankar House say he's mad, strange, and unfriendly. This was fact number 2. Maya says that the tenants means someone who pays rent to occupy a flat or a land. The tenants, other people who live at Shankar House, say he's mad, strange, and unfriendly. This is fact number 2. Number 3, he doesn't talk to anyone and is mannerless. Mannerless means having no manners, being impolite as well. Now, Nishad interrupts her. He says, but he did talk to us, Maya, and Mama says he is very polite. He interrupts her. He butts in. Nishad thinks that it's not true because he was talking to them. He only talked to us because he had to, I said, and since he was under Mama's medical treatment, he had to be polite. This is what Maya thinks. Maya thinks that he only talked to them because he had to. And she says, since he knows our mother, since our mother is his doctor under her treatment, he had to be polite. Maya thinks he was faking, he was pretending. Fact number 4, he doesn't receive any letters. On this, VII nodded. He agreed. It was true that Mr. Nutt he doesn't get any letters. Number 5, he's been living in room 10 of Shankar House for more than a year. Maya continues. Number 6, he doesn't work and sits in his room all day. These are all some things which Maya finds very strange. He has been living in this room for more than a year and he doesn't leave his room. He keeps sitting in his room. Number 7, the kids in Shankar House and even some of the grown-ups are scared of him. This is her fact number 7. She says that children in Shankar House, where Mr. Nath lives, and even some of the grown-ups, adults. Grown-up means an adult. They are both scared of him. They are afraid of him. Number 8. He has no visitors except for a spectacled, fair, fat man who visits him on Sunday for lunch. This is fact number 8. Maya finds it very unusual that Mr. Nath has no visitors. There is only a spectacled. Spectacled means someone wearing glasses. There is only this spectacled, fair, fat man who visits him on Sunday for lunch. We remember that Ramesh also told Nishad that on Sunday he brings lunch for the visitor as well. Number 9, food and tea are taken to his room by Ramesh from the restaurant downstairs. So Ramesh from the restaurant is the one who takes his food to Mr. Nath. He doesn't care what he eats. pays his bill immediately, and tips well. That ends my list. Have I forgotten anything, Stephen? 7. So Maya says that this is the last fact I could remember. Mr. Nut doesn't care what he eats. He's not really choosy. He pays his bill immediately. It means immediately at the very moment. And tips well. He is very generous with tips. She says, that ends my list. It means that's all. It finishes there. I have no more facts to tell you. Have I forgotten anything, 7? Nishad had obviously not been paying too much attention to my list of facts. All he could say was, poor man Maya, he must be so lonely if he doesn't have any friends. Maya is narrating the story. So she says that Nishad had obviously not been paying too much attention while she was reading her facts. Obviously means for sure. He had not been paying too much attention. He was not really listening what I was saying. He wasn't paying attention to her list of facts. List of facts means all these facts that she had written about Mr. Nut. And now she says Nishad was not really listening. He was not paying attention. All he could say was, it means he only said this much. Poor man Maya, he must be so lonely if he doesn't have any friends. So Maya says, how can a crook have friends, idiot? She says, I almost shouted. Shouting means yelling, screaming, saying something in a loud voice. Maya thinks that a crook cannot have friends, and she considered Mr. Nut to be a crook, a criminal. At least he has one friend, the one who meets him on Sundays, said Nishad. Because we remember that on Sundays there is someone who comes to visit Mr. Nut. On Sundays, Mr. Nut has lunch with a visitor. A brilliant thought occurred to me just then. That man must be Mr. Nut's accomplice in crime, I said. Maybe he keeps all the loot and he comes now and then to give part of it to his partner, Mr. Nut, for expenses. That's it. I'm sure I'm right. So Maya says that a brilliant thought, a brilliant means a wonderful thought occurred. She thought of something brilliant. To occur means to happen or to take place. A brilliant thought came to her mind. She thought of something. There was some idea that she thought of. So she says, the man, the visitor, must be Mr. Nut's accomplice in crime. Accomplice means associate or a person who helps another commit a crime. So Maya thinks that this visitor must be his accomplice, his partner in crime. She continues, maybe he keeps all the loot. Loot means the things stolen, something that has been robbed or plundered. Maya thinks that perhaps this visitor, he refers to the visitor. Maybe this visitor keeps all the loot, all the stolen things, and then he comes now and then. Now and then means sometimes. He comes sometimes to give part to his partner or accomplice in crime, Mr. Nut, for expenses. Expenses refers to some cost or charge, the cost incurred or required for something. This is what Maya thinks. And she says, that's it, I'm sure I'm right. She thinks that the visitor is Mr. Nut's partner in crime, accomplice in crime. And she thinks that perhaps he keeps all the stolen goods and comes here and there to give some money to Mr. Nut for expenses. This is where he gets money, and this is what Maya thinks. If you insist on calling him a criminal, I don't think I want to discuss anything with you, Maya, said Nishad angrily. He can't be such a bad man if he gives Ramesh such generous tips. Nishad doesn't agree. He tells her sister that if you insist, to insist means to persist in demanding something. It means to demand something forcefully, not accepting refusal. And same like Maya is insisting, he says, if you insist on calling him a criminal, if you are so persistent in calling him a criminal, I don't think I want to discuss anything with you, Maya. This is what her brother says. To discuss means to talk over, to talk through, or to talk about something with another person. He doesn't want to discuss anything with Maya if she will insist on calling him a criminal. And Nishad said that angrily, in an angry manner. He can't be such a bad man if he gives Ramesh such generous tips. Generous tips means plentiful. He gives him an ample tip, a good tip. That is why Nishad thinks he cannot be such a bad man. Ramesh probably knows something about his past, so Mr. Nath must be bribing him to keep quiet. I said, this is what Maya says, that Ramesh, who brings him food, he most probably knows something about his past. So that is why she says Mr. Nath must be bribing him to keep him quiet. To bribe means to corrupt or give some money for a favor. So she says Mr. Nath must be bribing Ramesh so that Ramesh doesn't say anything about his past. Nishad glared at me with his arms tightly crossed across his chest. I was beginning to get fed up with him. Maya says that Nishad glared. To glare means to stare in an angry or fierce way. Nishad was not happy. He stared, he glared at me, means at Maya, at his sister, with his arms tightly crossed across his chest. We usually keep our arms tightly crossed across our chest when we are not in a mood to discuss much. I was beginning to get fed up with him. Fed up means irritated or annoyed, unhappy. Maya was getting irritated. Nishad was not trusting her. So she said, how can we make any progress with our investigations if you take that attitude 7? This is what she asked him. How can they make any progress with their inquiries, with their investigations, if he is behaving like that? If he is taking that attitude? Attitude means point of view or frame of mind. Maya is saying that they will not be able to make any progress if he will behave like this. I'll cooperate only if you give up this idea about him being an escaped crook, said 7. You really make me angry. So 7 tells his sister that he will cooperate. Cooperate means collaborate or work together, jointly, towards the same end. So he says, I will cooperate only if you give up this idea, only if you stop calling him a escaped crook, only if you give up this idea of about him being an escaped crook, because 7 was sure he is not a criminal. He's not a crook. So Nishad is a bit angry because his sister doesn't believe him. And Maya is also a bit angry at her brother because he doesn't believe her theory. Nishad says, "You really make me angry." Maya says, "I almost hit him." "I make you angry, you stupid oaf," I shouted. Maya says, "You stupid oaf." Oaf means a man or a person who is rough or clumsy and unintelligent. We could say a clown or barbarian. Maya is also angry at Nishad. She says, "You make me mad." What is the point of all these inquiries if he is not a crook? Why are we bothering with all these inquiries, with all this investigation, if he is not a crook? He must be a crook. This is what she thinks. If you think he is a nobody, what's the idea of bothering about him? Please tell me. She says, if he is a nobody, if he is not a crook, what is the idea of bothering? Why do we even care about making a list of things that he does and what he eats and so on? What is the point of all this? Nishad looked thoughtful. "I'd like to find out why he's so thin and why he's so lonely. I want to know why he doesn't have any friends and lives alone." Nishad looked thoughtful. It means he was absorbed in a thought. He was thinking about something. And then he said, "I would like to find out why he's so thin, why he's so skinny, and why is he so lonely? Why is he isolated or alone? I want to know why he doesn't have any friends and why does he live alone." "Try to understand, Stephen. VII, I told him. If he's lived in Shankar house for a year and hasn't made a single friend, there's something wrong. He's obviously scared that someone will recognize him and give him up to the cops." Maya says, "VII, please understand. Try to understand. If he has lived in this house, in Shankar house, for a year, and within this year, this 1 year, he hasn't made a single friend, then there must be something wrong. He is obviously scared." He is obviously scared means he is definitely scared. It is clear that he is scared that someone will recognize him and give him up to the cops and surrender him to the cops, to the police. To recognize means to identify someone or something from having encountered them before. Maya thinks that he must be scared that someone will recognize him and turn him to the cops. Maybe no one's tried to make friends with him. Nishad protested. To protest means to object or to complain. So Nishad protested, he objected. He said that maybe no one has ever tried to make friends with him. "Why should anyone bother?" says Maya. "You've seen what a nasty bear he is." A nasty bear. Nasty means awful or very bad or unpleasant. Nasty bear would mean a horrible person or very unpleasant person. "I don't care," said Nishad stubbornly. "I like him and I'm going to try and be his friend." Nishad doesn't care. Stubbornly means in a stubborn way. He tells this in a stubborn way, in a manner that shows determination not to change his attitude or his mind. He says, "I like him and I am going to try and be his friend. Friends with a crook. Ha, you're crazy, Seven, I said. The cops will take you to jail with him. Do you want that to happen, you idiot? Seven's elder sister Maya tells him that she starts making fun of him. She says, friends with a crook. You are crazy. The cops, the police will take you to jail with him. Do you want that to happen, you idiot? Nishad merely glared at me and quietly walked out of the room. My theories seemed to have made no impression on him at all. Nishad just went out of the room. He walked out of the room. He merely glared. Merely means hardly. He hardly looked at her, and quietly he went. So Maya says, my theories seem to have made no impression on him at all. What Maya wants to say is that whatever she was trying to explain didn't give any effect, didn't produce a strong effect on her brother. He didn't believe it. Dear students, this was our story called Expert Detectives, written by Sharada Dwivedi. I hope you like the story. What can we learn from the story is that probably we should not judge people by their appearance, right? Appearances are often deceptive. So that is why we should not judge people from the way they look. We should not judge people by their appearance. Dear students, this is all for now. See you soon.